stink bug in the machine.
All right, everybody. Once again, I did have a technical issue. Apparently, YouTube is just not liking OBS right now, but I was able to kind of figure things out. Welcome to my live stream, my third one in this series. And as I've said in the past, the one thing that I want to kind of do is, just keep it open topic. But immediately after I threw a question out there on a couple of the Facebook groups about equipment purchases, I started thinking, maybe I should make this particular open mic a little bit more focused on just, how to purchase, why to purchase. Are you going to make your ROI against, over a short period of time, a long period of time? So I want to kind of get into my methodologies of how I make my purchases and, what makes those decisions click. And, hopefully I'm not wasting money, time, or effort doing all of this. So to start, when I started in 2012 and kind of at the very end of 2012, I was essentially a bedroom DJ at that point. I had not DJ'd for well over 12 years, and I was just kind of jumping into the game, and I actually ran into a gig that needed both music and uplights. And right off the bat, uplights was a serious investment to consider, and I kind of weighed all the options, and ultimately I decided that, as much as I didn't want to, I chose corded uplights, and it was a real pain in the ass to set up. But in the end, it did work out. The gig went just fine, but I ended up selling those lights off fairly quickly. And part of the reason why is I don't think I did enough research behind it. I just looked at kind of the cost aspects of things and just decided that, what, maybe I need to change up the game. Maybe I need to go to battery lights. So right off the bat, I almost want to kick myself a little bit because I just spend all this money on uplights, and I did recoup almost all my costs. I think I lost like $50 out of the entire deal, so it wasn't a big loss. But I always want to make the most intelligent decisions that I can by getting the amount of information that I need, seeing where those financials lie, and then make a good choice. So later on down the road, I did finally buy uplights and all that. And I was just saying some battery powered uplights, and each investment that I made was always reasoning. This would just fall into place if I have this particular piece of equipment. I can offer this service, and ultimately, most of these things did work out. I actually think I made very few impulsive purchases, and even those still had a purpose. But I might have spent a little bit extra money, or put a little bit too much effort into deciding on something when I probably could have just backed off a little bit. Just like this year, one of the things I was thinking about doing was getting a new stand, custom table built out, having a very similar look to what I have, but having some unique features behind it. But it's an extraordinarily expensive piece for just a stand. And I decided to kind of throw that towards a later purchase. And part of that is, all that really is more flash and aesthetics than it is functionality or purpose. But there's been other purchases that I made, like I want to say about 6 months into my business, and I saw things were picking up, and I started proving that this model that I was looking at of starting my wedding DJ business was going to be successful. So immediately, actually, it was the first time I got to talk to Ben Stowe in this case, and I bought a Rain 62 mixer and my Denon SE3900 decks, and they truly served a purpose. My tractor I really was not happy with. I was actually having some random problems with here and there, and making that purchase, and it was definitely not inexpensive, especially only having like 5 or 6 weddings under my belt. But I saw where the trajectory was going. Things were looking really positive, and I knew that I could recoup those costs fairly quickly, and I did. And I always employed that model every single time that I made a purchase. And there was a couple occasions where I made a purchase, thought it was going to be good, end up not working well, like when I bought the Mackie DL806 digital mixer. Quality mixer, but then I stumbled across the Soundcraft UI16, and that just blew it out of the water. And I used a Mackie for like 7-8 months, and I was ultimately able to sell it, and I didn't lose that much money off of it. But again, if I just, timing sometimes just comes into play. I could have maybe saved a few dollars by not getting the Mackie, but the Mackie did give me some features. And sometimes you just can't predict what's going to happen. So and I constantly have people, asking me, about these particular purchases, how things are going to work out. And one of the very first questions I always ask is, does it serve a purpose? Does this enable service? Does this give you more money? Does this give you more capabilities? Does this add a backup solution to what you have? Does it provide something where what you currently have can't provide, and it gives you an improvement? If not, you've fallen into the gear envy side of the equation. It's very easy to get trapped into, because there's always new equipment, there's always new controllers, there's always new mixers, there's always the latest microphones. There's another great example where Sennheiser has their G4 mics. Would love to have them. Very slick looking. Actually has a beautiful feature of being able to sync all the frequencies when you join all of them up right from one of the units itself, so I don't have to program them individually. Yeah, that'll save me a couple minutes, but is it worth the extra investment? Unfortunately not. There aren't too many additional enhancements of the G4 model over the G3, so I'm going to stick with those mics for at least some time. If I was to ever change my mics, it would probably be to the Shure quad mic, the QL-XD4. Big money, it's like $9,000, but it shrinks the rack size a little bit, gives me a couple additional features. It could be worth it if I really wanted to go that route. But just jumping up to the G4 mics, unfortunately for me, at this time wouldn't work. So what are my big purchases for this year? Well, one of the more from at least a sound perspective is adding a subwoofer to my EV50s. I love my EV50s. I've sung praises for them all throughout last year when I had them. And they've been a great asset, especially with some of these farms and barns where there are difficult load-ins, and sometimes having to carry them upstairs, and having these speakers produces such incredible sound out of such a small package. But the flip side is, when you're in a really big room, they just don't fill the expanse quite enough. Physics dictates it's a lot of air that it's got to fill up. And sometimes you just lose that punch. There's a really, really good natural response from the EV50s, but the flip side is you lose some of that boom as you would even with a standard 12-inch subwoofer like I have in my old Yamahas. But I've been debating, and I know this year, because I have a good number of gigs now in somewhat larger halls than what I'm typically playing at, I want to fill that up. I still want to keep the 50s because they're such an elegant look, they're such a great sound, and they still fill the space, just with a little bit less bass than I would like for those particular rooms. So I'm going to get an EKX 15 SP sub. And from what I've heard, a few people now have added this into their mix, and they've been very, very pleased with it. So I'm definitely looking forward to that as a mid-May purchase. Once again, I'm going through Bedstone for mine, but choose your best rep if you're going to add an addition or something like that. Another thing that I've been considering is and I really wish I could this year, and I just don't know if it's going to happen, is a new van. I've had my Town and Country for a few years now, and it's served me well, but I really am running out of room. Right behind my records are my entire setup, and it takes up a lot of space in the house. Putting it in the basement, unfortunately, isn't the best solution. I've been really thinking of wanting to have it always in the van, so it's just something less that I have to worry about unpacking and repacking all the time. But that is a somewhat larger investment, and I could write more of that off tax-wise, but it's still a fairly substantial piece where, if the cards fall and I get even more gigs than I was initially planning on, even though I'm trying to keep my gig count lower this year to about 30, if I do decide to take some on, more events like that, that's something I could easily see myself finally making a decision to go to. Something I did find of interest when I threw these questions out to these two groups was there wasn't a single big thing that was a recurring theme with everybody. Sometimes there's a new big tech item that comes out, or something new conceptual wise, and it seems that people that I was responding to this thread were being very selective in what they were doing. Some people were adding some additional lighting. I know one person, he has a more larger production company, and he's making bigger investments in vehicles and all this additional equipment. But everything seemed to be somewhat justified. I was figuring that I was going to get some true gear envy people, jumping in. I want to get the Rain 72 because it's just the best thing out in the market, and it's sharp. I would love to have a Rain 72. But to be honest, I love my 62s. This is probably what I'm going to be rolling out for my gigs for this year, waiting for my phases to come in. And I don't need the 72, so it'd be hard for me personally to justify it. But been very happy to see that people are making some very wise choices. They're making good business choices. And I can't stress that enough from people that, this again, it's such a hard, and not just for DJs, for photographers and for so many others. You can get trapped into that gear envy side, that new telephoto lens that comes out, the new bodies from Canon and Nikon that are out. For us, the latest mixers that is coming out, newest lights. It's always, tempting to jump right in, but always justify your purchases. You don't want to just start losing some of your profit out of your company just because, I really wanted this latest lights, or I wanted this latest mixer or whatnot. All that being said, one additional investment I am considering are lights. I've been getting a couple more uplight requests than I have over the years. And I've had some Chinese lights since 2013. It was the battery lights that I did end up choosing, and they fairly served well. They're a little wonky at times, but they served this purpose. But the flip side of that is when I tested out the Ape Lights Maxis, I was just so impressed with them between their not total waterproof, but truly water resistant, how easily it is to control. And now with the W app being able to adjust color schemes and all that, since I've been an early tester, I've been able to test that out, and it's an amazing piece of kit to have, having everything charged in the same case. I've just been thoroughly impressed. So I'm really hoping, I actually want to wait for one or two more lighting gigs to truly justify the cost, and then ultimately dive into it. I see Scott mentioned here that I should get the Sprinter with a high roof. That's something that I actually had a Ram ProMaster 2500 high roof when my Town and Country went into the shop last year. And unfortunately for my particular setup, it was just way too much. It's great to stand in, don't get me wrong, but the amount of space that I occupy in it is minuscule compared to, especially when you get more full production companies. If I had a whole bunch of totems and scaffolding, if I was rolling really big subs and all that, if I had a couple rolling carts, a couple Toadmatics or something like that for different gigs, that would definitely make sense. But right now I'm really thinking more on the city van side, the NV200, the Dodge ProMaster City, although I'd probably not buy one just because the dealership that I've unfortunately been dealing with took forever with my van, literally months. Yep, 4-cylinder diesel. There's and of course the Chevy City Express and the Ford, oh my God, I already forgot the name of it, but all in that same size. I asked DJ Toad about the Toadmatics fitting inside of those, and he's got it in his Ford Transit Connect, and so I know that it will be able to accommodate it, and it would almost fit in my Town and Country, but the ceiling height is just a little bit too short for it. But I would love to have something like that where I can just roll in, save even more time and effort setting up and breaking down. But my current vehicle definitely takes away from what I can do with that. But on the flip side in all this, these investments, we always have to be smart about. We always have to think, like I said, I could go get a 2500, a Sprinter, something of that effect, something very large, would expand for my future if I ever grew that large. But I honestly don't know if I would actually grow that big. One of my niches that I've fallen into, both for good and for bad, is I have a very low upsale on most of my things. I get people getting interested in uplights every now and then. I do get photo booth inquiries, but I actually contract those out because I want to have somebody manning those booths, and I'm not in the realm right now to actually hire people. And I do everything myself. I'm a one-person roadie here. So as much as I could easily expand, add all this additional stuff, it actually wouldn't be the same service that I offer right now. So kind of knowing my role, knowing what has made me successful at this point is always something I have to be cognitive of as I proceed forward with things like that. But in the end, all I can say is think before you buy. When you do buy, make sure you get it from reputable people. Don't always look at the cheapest. I know I've seen this a few times. I know a few people that I've talked to who sell equipment get absolutely perturbed about this, that they'll put their efforts out there to help people to design their systems, pick out things that will fit just right. Then they might jump on Amazon and save $10, sometimes literally $1. They'll switch over to save those precious few dollars. Remember those in the industry that are offering their help, that are offering their expertise. You can't match that at other places. You can't, you have not had that knowledge and then jumping over to places like Amazon and whatnot, and then, saving yourself $5, $10, $20. If you're picking something up very small, very quick, like a very short cable or something that's just a throwaway, sure, go to Amazon and all that. I do that. But then, find yourself one or two very, very good, high quality reps that, know their stuff, that can answer any technical question that they throw at you. Because when you make these purchases, you don't want to make the wrong purchase. I remember we had our argument a few months ago about microphone and frequencies, and me and Ben Stowe was talking to somebody, and he was just convinced that buying an A-band mic for, I think it was Los Angeles, was just the right thing to do. And little did that guy know that the frequencies were too crowded for A-band. He had a better chance going A1 or G. And that is the position some people take, where they might see a little bit of knowledge, they'll read a little bit something, but they don't dive in deep enough, or they think they know just enough. They don't lean on some of the other industry professionals out there, and get their opinions. And sometimes, I can understand why, because some of these forums really can be abrasive. Sometimes, if somebody asks too simple of a question, people will, shut them down. And that's a little unfortunate. It is what it is. It's the personalities that are out there. But I know personally, when people come to me, I'm always like, this is my experience. This has been a good investment. This has been a waste of money. Or I'm still on the fence on certain things. So, as always, I don't want to keep these sessions too long. We're at 7:21, so we're about 15, 16 minutes in. I do hope that you've enjoyed this session. As always, I hope. Oh, hi, Howie. I'm just unfortunately about to end this, and hopefully Howie will be able to check the replay. Also, check out my podcast. I usually upload those within the first 30 minutes or hour of this being completed. Also hoping that the audio quality is a little better on the podcast. I have learned now that my streaming quality that's going up to YouTube is a little bit lower than I would like. I have to compress down the video a little bit and the audio down a bit, so it sounds sometimes a little bit muffled, and the pictures, a little bit more grainy than I would like. I've actually debated whether I'm going to be doing a lot of these live streams, just because I'm not as happy with the quality as I want. Talk about your ceremony setup. I can do that. I got a couple extra minutes here. So my ceremony setup is, I've got a mentality where I want to interchange a lot of my equipment. I want to have backups and primaries that can be interchanged with things. So my ceremony setup and my reception, my main digital boxes, are literally identical right now. I have a pair of UI 16s by Soundcraft. I have a pair of IEM 300 G3s from Sennheiser. I have two very low cost routers that I throw in the back, because the wireless, the Wi-Fi that's coming out of the UIs are just, they don't have a lot of range. And I have a PDU inside it, and I've terminated that PDU with a PowerCon connection. And that's my digital mixer box. And I have two of them. I have one set up for ceremony. I have one set up for reception. And I can always interchange if I have something that breaks or I have to have a secondary setup somewhere. It allows me that flexibility. In addition, I also have my mics that plug into it. Now, just the mixer, that is the UI16, as Scott is asking about. It's been an incredible mixer. I'm going to throw a link to my review below on the UI16, but in short, it allows me to do a lot of things, especially as a solo DJ. It allows me to walk around the entirety of a venue, adjust sound when I combine that with my IEM, and I can place my additional speakers anywhere that I want. I can constantly adjust the sound. I can constantly adjust the EQ. Another beautiful thing about having the UI16, you can actually save shows. So where I go to my normal, 4 or 5 different venues, I actually, I'll tweak them out just a little bit. Some have a little bit different acoustics for each one, and I'll adjust it out just a little bit. I'll save it as the name of that venue. So when I go back, I just load that up and I don't have to worry about any additional setup for that. And usually the only little minor tweaks, but sometimes those minor tweaks can really help. It allows me to set up to 6 auxiliary channels, and I've never used that many, but it gives me that flexibility. So on my reception rig, I have my main outs coming out to quartered outs and an auxiliary going to my IEM. Where my ceremony box, I have just the one connection going to my IEM. But I can always flip that around literally in like 10 seconds. And the setup, again, is identical, where I can kind of adjust and do what I need to do with that. I can run it from my iPad, Scott. So the beauty of the UI16 is it's browser-based. So whether it's Android, whether it's Apple, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, a phone, you can bring up the browser on this and adjust everything. The phone is definitely a little bit tweaky to do it. I did have one time where my iPad had run out of power and my power brick was not working for it, and I was able to control the rest of the night with the phone, so it worked in a pinch. And when I'm emceeing, it gives me a little bit additional flexibility. So for my introductions, I still almost always stay behind the table because I normally have to cue in different songs, and there's just no good way to doing that without having an entire row of things in front of me to do that. But if I'm doing something like the shoe game, or when I'm doing toasts, I can already walk out in front of that, microphone in hand. I almost always have a backup microphone on the back of my belt as well. And I can adjust everything as need be. So I can be close by where everybody is, just out of the shot of photos, and adjust as people's voices carry and lower. I don't know how many times where you get that, the uncle or aunt or whomever whose microphone's holding over here, then up here, and then using it as a pointer. I can at least, try to adjust and accommodate as needed. Let's see. And I want to control mic and music level when not behind the console. So you can absolutely do that. I keep mine plugged in right now for the gig where I can, and then when I need to jump out, I just simply unplug it, so I'll have as much power as possible. I do know with my iPad, I can easily run an entire gig without it. I just don't want to constantly be draining my battery all the time. But the one thing that you won't be able to do is select songs. Now, I say that with a caveat that it does have its own music player, and that's what I use for the ceremony setup, but you would literally have to fade in and fade out for each song selection. Or if you're doing something like just a simple autoplay, it does have an auto mix function. It doesn't blend music like, say, virtual DJ. It's more like Serato in that case. But you can definitely use it for music playback. I'll use it. I'll bring my, my single channel coming in from the mixer, and I'll use that to adjust as needed as well, and always checking to make sure my levels are good. No problem, Scott. I hope that really helped out. Again, I'll link the video where I go extensively into some of the feature sets that I use and kind of break out each piece of the UI16. So look for the link below in the end of the video. We're at about 23 minutes or so now. Again, I hope you enjoyed this. If you do, make sure you check out my other videos on my 4DJs Only playlist. If you love videos like this as well, and if you have the time and effort, Support me on Patreon. That definitely, it's $1 a month, but that helps me out with additional equipment purchases, some of the time and effort that I'm putting into all these videos and blogs as well. I do want to apologize. I do have a couple blog posts up there that I still haven't transcribed. That's another real pain. Trying to do all this is not just doing the videos, but I always try to transcribe what I have. I have a couple fairly lengthy videos, and I'm still like a quarter of the way through. So hopefully I'll get those out soon. If you don't have a chance to watch video too often and rather hear there's some podcasts, check out Spotify, iTunes, anywhere else where you get podcasts. You'll see this pop up pretty quickly. Again, I hope you enjoyed this. Have a great end of the day, guys, and see you next week.